Alright, what's good YouTube? Cardfight King here, Aqua Life baby. So we have Mr. Emery here who got first place with his what is it? Nirvana deck profile. This is going to be the first video of the overhaul. So we're going to be doing a lot of different deck profiles, a lot of different content here. I'm definitely committed to it. I got more coming up here. So we're going to start off with the first Overdress tournament's winner's profile. By all means, start with your ride deck.
Alright, so getting to the ride deck, obviously you're going to run the trial deck ride deck of Nirvana and the girls, but in terms of the starter, I run the Trick Star instead of the Egg, because I feel like going into turn 3, being able to have two Trick Stars, one from searching it and one in your drop zone from soul blasting it later, is easier to achieve basically your game plan of having a front row of just Overdress units to keep smacking in with immediately. So that's why we have that. And I guess we'll go from the grade 3s down. So obviously, if you're going to run Nirvana, you run the other copies of them, obviously, to keep Persona riding. And then it's a Virina deck, so obviously you got to run the 4 Valientes. Pretty good card. Don't know how exactly useful it'll be going into next sets, but as of right now, being able to just have a big beater that stays consistently big from your opponent to not swing into on their turn is pretty good. The on-hit itself, I don't know how useful it really came up in. It was very good as like a bluff in case I just had the counterblast open, but it really didn't come up all that much, so it's not definitely something you got a hard focus on achieving whenever he's out. And on to the grade 2s, obviously we run 4 draw 2 arcs, pretty good card. You usually want to mull for this really hard so that you have your best turn 2, because your best turn 2 is obviously searching Trick Star and getting this out. Obviously that changes depending on the matchup in case you want to get like base Virina out, in case you want to snipe Bruce's starter if you're in that situation, just that you can inhibit them drawing a card later. And speaking of which, you definitely do run 4 of them because, well, you don't really have any better beaters. So, you know.
You might as well, if you're going to commit to Overdress, Overdress.
Yeah, really.
Do it.
And then to finish up the grade 2s, I run 4 of the Blitz Order, the one that gives you 15k shield in case you have 3 more damage. You really don't have that many good cards. You could cut this down for more grade 1s, but I feel like that because the grade 1 options aren't really all that good, this at least gives you some more defensive power, which you definitely will need against more aggressive decks like Bastion, if you're not too lucky enough to hit them with aggro faster than they do.
Alright, my masters!
In terms of grade 1s, obviously your 4 PGs, can't really go without them in this format. And then in terms of grade 1s, I know some people like running the Tench instead, the Persona Ride Tutor, but for me, I personally like the 10k booster more, because with this, you don't need to pay a cost for it to do something. It's just a 10k. It makes really good numbers whenever you're on or off Persona Ride turn, so I think it's just the best option that you have right now. I definitely think that going into Festival Collection, you should probably swap this out with Mirin, because that just sort of gives you more power spread around your board, but yeah, not much to really say about 10k booster. And to round out that, other Trick Stars, because, you know, you gotta see them.
Yeah.
In terms of the trigger lineup, obviously you run the Drag Veda.
Over trigger.
7 crit, because you want to kill people really fast, because this deck really doesn't have all that much except for big numbers going into turn 3. 4 heals, and then finishing up with draws, because you really want to draw your pieces. You want to draw more Trick Stars if people start interacting with your board a lot. And it's basically, it's your best fodder card really for a lot of your things, like for your ride line dropping, for your PGs really. So yeah, there's not really much to say to it. It's only set 1, so you know, you really like to work with what you got.
Do you consider this an aggressive deck?
I definitely think that this is definitely more leaning towards an aggressive deck, because all this deck really wants to do is set up a board that can hit really nice numbers immediately as you go into your turn 3. I definitely think that because you can definitely run draws in this because of arcs being able to fuel you more. You could play this a lot more defensively. I did have a couple of games where it really went down to the wire of like decking out really, because with having a board set up immediately and your opponent's just not having a way to interact with it, you can just hoard all your cards into your hand and just keep swinging basically turn after turn. The trial triggers really help with that when you get into decks that counteract that basically by also them playing out the long game. But you can do a mix of both really, depending on if you run more if you run less draws, more crits, or like fronts or something, you could play a little bit of both. But yeah, it's definitely a lot more of an aggressive build.
Okay. Well, awesome. Thank you. Well, you got first place with the deck today.
Yes.
Good job. What were your matchups?
My matchups, round 1, I played against Bruce. That went into 3 games. It definitely came into a lot harder to win during the 3rd game because both of us popped off really hard, but playing into getting rid of their Marjories and Edens really helps shut down their game plan of beating you down faster than you can. So that's how that went. Round 2 was against the Mirror. That really went into a really long game of who lasts longer in terms of deck count and just aggression. My opponent really didn't have a completely finished deck, so I won out in that very easily. Round 3 was against I can't really remember now, but it was against Bruce again. That game ended very one-sidedly with me hitting my over trigger both games. Can't really do anything about that. My opponent really couldn't come back from it. Over triggers are fun, guys.
Yay!
Yay! And then round 4 was against Bastion. That was very back and forth. Game 1 being very Bastion favored. Game 2 being very middling, with both of us going very back and forth. And game 3 being one-sided more so in my favor. So it's definitely not an unfun deck to go against. It's definitely capable of having very back and forth games, but like it's not so. It's like a one-sided like flop over.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for the deck profile. Good job on the win today. We'll see you probably next week.
Definitely.
All right. See you guys later.